Razorback Nation, welcome back into episode 25 of Hogs on the Hill, your go-to podcast for an in-depth dive into all things Arkansas Razorbacks. Join us as we dissect the victories, analyze the plays, and revel in the spirit of the Hogs. And we are joined by longtime friend and guest of the show, David from Hoops Southbound, to talk Arkansas basketball with us in just a little bit. But before we get started, episode 25 is brought to you by Homefield. Step into the legacy of collegiate style with Homefield's premium vintage apparel. Crafted, comfortable, and stylish collections. Elevate your game day attire and celebrate the rich history of college sports. Homefield, where tradition meets modern comfort. In every stitch, you can use promo code Variety Sports in all caps to receive 15% off that first order. Thanks to the network over here at Variety Sports. And, we'll just dive in here, guys, and get your thoughts. We had our recap show on Sunday, after that terrible loss Saturday. But, whoever wants to start first, what are your guys' thoughts on, what happened Saturday and kind of the state of the Arkansas football program right now as we got 3 games left in the season?
I'll let you guys go for that because, I'm the basketball person here, but I just got one word to sum it up, really, and I think it's been said a couple of times. Ugly is what Saturday was, just purebred ugly.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. The biggest thing to me is it kind of brought everybody back to reality that this team, while it has moments of greatness, is not consistent yet at really any facet of the game. We've had really good moments where our defense has played well here and there, even in the secondary. Guys like Danico Slaughter have had really good games and then really bad games. You kind of have been getting a tale of two sides of it, if you will. On defense, offense, even special teams, we've had some games where we've done fairly well punting and kicking field goals, and then we've had some games where we haven't done – it's kind of been a mixed bag all year long to me, it feels like. And this game, we came back down to earth a little bit in a lot of categories. Our offense did okay, not great, but our defense really, really looked like a sieve out there. I mean, Jordan Watkins – what a game for him, for Ole Miss, breaking a ton of records and receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, it's just a crazy game for them. But at the same time, Ole Miss has had a very similar season where they've had some really good games, some fairly bad games. I think the stars collided or aligned, however you want to phrase it, where Ole Miss had one of their better games of the season and we had one of our worst games of the season, if you will, with a couple bad turnovers. Obviously, the fumble in the end zone was disastrous. It kind of felt like the writing was on the wall there when I don't know, something felt funky about that. I know we made the goal line stop, but then you get the ball there and it was just ugly. So it to me, it regrounds everybody. I think a lot of people took the Tennessee win and really ran with it maybe just a bit too far, thinking, we're going to win out the rest of the season, maybe barring the Texas game. And that really hasn't happened. And I don't think that was ever going to happen. I think we're a kind of team where you're going to have some wins that you shouldn't get, and you're going to have some losses that you probably shouldn't lose. So far this year, I don't personally think we've had a game that we've lost that we shouldn't have on paper, outside of maybe like Oklahoma State, even though on paper they were supposed to win that game. Looking back, they're not a good team. We really outplayed them, should have won that one. Outside of that, though, the rest of the losses, I think everybody had picked to be losses. Anyway, take all that with a grain of salt. I think this season still has potential to be a good season. Got to get Talon back healthy again. I think he is key to success. I thought Singleton played very well in the minutes he was out there in replacement of Talon after he got hurt, and that's a good sign. But I still think you're going to need Talon long term for the rest of the season to maybe pick up another win or two, especially Louisiana Tech. And I think there's a good chance we beat Missouri. That would be kind of the icing on the cake at the end of the season. It would wash a little bit of the bitter taste out against Ole Miss. Obviously, some of the earlier games in the season, like Texas A&M, if you can finish the year 7-5, get a fair enough bowl game, and maybe win that one to win 8 games on this year, that's a very successful season, in my opinion. So it's still possible. Everybody's hitting the panic button right now, and I think it's too early, even though this was an ugly loss. The only thing I expected to lose this game, even counting back to the beginning of the season. And then even before this game, we know we had maybe a better shot. It just didn't materialize. But that's what I was the most upset about, is just the way we got beat. It was ugly, ugly, ugly. I mean, we hadn't gotten beat that bad in a hot minute, especially by an Ole Miss team. So the defense really fell through on that one. And that was the biggest eye-opener to me. But all in all, got to bounce back from that and try to get back to a little bit higher level of consistency. And I think there's some winnable games left on the schedule.
Yeah, no, when I said ugly, like honestly, you're right. We haven't seen anything like this in a while. That was almost more Morris era level bad. Like that was horrendous. And the fact is Ole Miss may be a better football team. I don't think they're put 60 points up on you better football team than Arkansas. I think Arkansas played really bad. Is the big thing here. And the other side of this whole, you're talking about getting to the 8 wins and everything else. I think that would be great. And I'm 100% with you. Like, I think that's still a successful season. That's something that can happen. If you win a bowl game, keep moving the needle forward. I'm okay continuing to see what this coaching staff is going to do as long as progression is still happening. Like, I'm not a fan of just, I'm not a fan just sitting here thinking like, oh, that just went so bad, we've got to get rid of Sam Pittman. I'm not really there. My mindset is really more like, as long as we're continuing to move forward, because I'm not ignorant to where this football team was 5 years ago to where this football team is now. Because let me tell you, the football team we have right now would probably beat some of those teams that Chad Morris had by about as much as Ole Miss put on Arkansas today. So that's why I'm not just overly as upset as I could be, but the word ugly and a horrible taste in your mouth, this really sits there. And I think that's what's really running through the fan base right now. And understandably so, why they're upset.
Yeah, real quick. One thing I want to point out, you look at the Mississippi State game, the team last year would have lost that game by 20.
Yeah.
Obviously, we lost against Mississippi State last year. Anyway, it was 7-3. It was the ugliest game I've ever seen nearly my entire life. That Mississippi State team has a good enough offense that they would have destroyed last year's Arkansas team. So just that alone right there shows you that the needle has moved at least some. I think there was a lot of things that caused that, whether it be transfer portal, coaching hires. There's a lot of stuff, culture, whatever. There's several things, that I think have attributed to it. But to your point, I feel like we are going in the right direction. But there's been a couple of stumbling blocks along the way that have kept that trajectory pattern. There's been a few little setbacks, but I still think we're taking maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Overall, still moving forward, though.
Yeah, and that's exactly the key. That's what we all want. That's what I think every Razorback fan wants, is to continuously move forward with this football program. Look, it's not going to happen overnight. We know that. There's a lot of things that need to take place, not only just on the football field side of things, but we talk about NIL, we talk about recruiting, we talk about all these other things to get this program back to where it was during the 2000s, early 2010s, prior to, the John L. Smith year. That's the goal, is to get this program back there, but that's going to take time, and that's going to take a lot of effort, especially in a new landscape of college sports nowadays. So I'm more patient than probably some other fans are out there, but I see both sides of the argument right now. But to me, as long as that needle keeps moving, I'm okay taking a stumbling block. I just wish it wasn't that ugly where we just face planted when we took the stumble.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so let me pose a question to you guys. So, coming into the season, a lot of people would have deemed, Coach Pittman on the hot seat, rightfully so, after how bad last season was. We start the season, you get a win against UAPB, rightfully so. You look good against Oklahoma State, but dropped that one, which that was a game that could have been a toss-up to begin with. You come back home, you beat UAB in an ugly game. You beat Auburn in an ugly game. And, you look okay against Texas A&M and Dallas. Still some big key mess-ups that caused us to lose that game. Then you come back home and beat Tennessee. And that kind of, a lot of people are saying, well, that win right there kind of maybe gets Pittman off the hot seat a little bit. And then, we get to this point today where you come off that game, come out really flat against LSU. You go on the road, get things done against Mississippi State, and then you have this bad loss this week. Does this loss this week kind of start heating that seat back up a little bit, or are you still kind of he's off it a little bit based off of how the seasons went and getting a big win against Tennessee at home?
I think, okay, so me personally, and I'll stop talking because, again, I'm the basketball guest here, but for me personally, 6 is this number, right? 6 is this number that you definitely want to get to. There's no excuse. Gotta have that this late in the tenure. Got to have that 6th win. I will say this. Just getting to 6 might not be enough. There are some other factors that need to be considered in that equation. There is a coach right now who is an Arkansas alumni who went to a team that was in the group of 5 and is currently now in a Power 5 program or Power 4 program in the football world. Power 5 for us basketball people. But in the he's doing well and is on the verge of getting into the playoff right now. He may have some interest in Arkansas. My takeaway of that is if you don't see just the 6th win, and you're going to have to show that I am the right guy for the job as well. Like, I think that's where it's kind of at right now. If there's interest in him, that's this said coach that I'm putting out there in the ether to come to Arkansas, that would probably be an upgrade hire. But for Sam Pittman really to keep his job at Arkansas, I think it would have to be you have that hire locked down. You know he wants this job. And B, that you have seen progressive growth for this program. It's not going to just be, do you get that 6th win against La Tech? Because let's be frank, it's against La Tech. We're supposed to beat La Tech. That's what's supposed to happen. I want to see this team come out and have fight against Texas. And I want to see them play Mizzou extremely hard. Like, that's what I want to see. And this show me that, yes, this is still worth investing in for sure to keep going. Otherwise, I do think that there is going to be some desire to take note of said coach or other coach out there who might be very interested, who's doing very well. There's another coach out there who's doing well in a certain conference out there near the Rocky Mountains. So, that might also be interested in this job.
I think that's a fair assessment. That's a kind of, I'm going to repeat it just in my own words, but I completely agree. I think a lot of it depends on how these last 3 games go. 6, I'm not going to say it's a magic number because I don't think it's a magic number, but it is a goal. There is a palpable goal of getting to that 6th win to give you the opportunity to maybe get a 7th win after the regular season is over and maybe, add a little cherry on top, make the season look a little bit better. 7-6 feels better than 6-6, obviously, or 6-7 if you lose your bowl or something like that. That's especially gross. But I think the biggest thing is you have to do what you're supposed to do against Louisiana Tech. Very similar to how we did against Mississippi State, for example. You have to go out there and be the better team. You can't have a almost stumble type win like we did against UAB. You have to be past that and show that you've grown from that and can consistently beat the teams you're supposed to. And then to your point, you have to be at least somewhat competitive against Texas. I think they're going to have their way with us a little bit. Just if our secondary doesn't find a way to play better, I really think that's going to be everybody's kind of learned how to beat us. Either nickel and diamond on the short passes, and then that opens up the deep ball when we try to press up, and we just sit there and we get in this back and forth game where we just can't cover any of it. So people have kind of figured that out on us. So we've got to find a way to shore that up. And the offense has to be competitive and be able to run the ball a little bit better than we did against Ole Miss. And those are the things that you have to do against Texas. Be competitive, to your point. And then Missouri, be competitive. I would almost say that's kind of a must-win with some of the progression it feels like you've made this year, some of the regression that Missouri's had. It really feels like that's a very winnable game and is almost a must-win in my mind, even though it's not necessarily like get you bowl eligible or anything of that nature. Missouri's had our number for a minute for some reason, and we've got to be able to break that mold. That's a team we should beat more often than not the other way around.
Well, frankly or not, if it's a rivalry game or whatever you want to face, talk about it as a Razorback fan, at the end of the day, it's time to beat Missouri.
It's time. We're due.
You're like, good grief. Like,
our team is a lot better this
programs
year.
And everything else. You're supposed to beat Missouri like at some point, and this has just gotten ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, so like to that point, we're obviously due one. Let's be real, and I think everybody's seen just the way these seasons have culminated. We need to beat them this year. This is a very, very winnable time for us to beat them. Their team is not near as good. They're having some serious injury issues at their quarterback position. Their backup quarterback's bad. Like, there's a lot of things in my mind that kind of wrap that bow nice and neat. That should be a win after everything we've seen through week 9 or 10 or whatever. Now, earlier on in the year, everybody kind of had that one chalked up as a loss because they were assuming Missouri was going to be as good or close to as good as they were last year. That's not been the case. Arkansas has been a lot better than we were last year. So I think these teams are on more even footing. And I know it's not a must win, if you looked at it back 7 or 8 weeks ago, but right now it almost feels that way, especially with this bad loss against Ole Miss. You need to finish the season strong to get some confidence back around this coaching staff, get the fans back happy. You don't want to end the season with a sour taste because you've already had enough sour taste throughout the regular season, if that makes sense. So whether it's with a Missouri win or a bowl game win, one of those two things has to happen for sure at the end of the year, I think. But even so, if somehow the wheels just fall off and you barely beat Louisiana Tech, you lose to Texas badly, you lose to Missouri either close or badly, one of the two, and then you lose your bowl game, that's going to have a very bad feeling on the end of the year. And even though you're 6-6 and made a bowl and that's that check mark, but whatever, there's going to be a lot more serious conversations, even though you made a bowl, just because the way the end of the season felt, and it felt like you regressed compared to how you were midway through the season when you beat Tennessee. You felt like you were getting some momentum, and you would give that momentum all back up. So I think these next 3 games are going to be critical on coaching staff decisions and things of that nature, but just the overall fan consensus on, was this a good year or not? It's already been a good year in a way, but you really need to have a good taste in your mouth at the end of it.
Let me ask you guys this. You can talk about whatever, this is your show, but I was just sitting there thinking about this. Like, is a Birmingham Bowl good enough? Is that good enough? Is going 6-6, just getting to a bowl game long term, would that get anybody excited for next season? Would that make anybody want to go out and buy season tickets next year? Is going to the Birmingham Bowl and winning the Birmingham Bowl maybe? Like, does that get you any more season ticket holders for next season? Or do we need to see something more to show that, not to get that sour taste out of this fan base's mouth from the last 2 seasons and show that, this is the product that you should keep investing in?
Yeah. So let me start here. It's tough to say any bowl game's not a good one, but when you talk about notoriety of bowl games, I mean, that is towards the bottom tier level of bowl games. I mean, the fact that if we can make postseason would be great, because not every team gets postseason. But, I think I've talked with you guys both individually about this, and this is kind of where I fall. I don't want this program to be where it's, that's get our 6 wins and go to a bowl game is kind of what we settle for. And I know specifically I had this conversation with you the other night, David, was at this point, if, at the end of the day, at the end of the season, no matter the results, if the board and, the athletic director say, okay, it's time, we need to shift direction, get rid of Pittman, whether it be him retiring like some of the things have been floating around, or, just firing him, that's fine if that's their decision. But if that is their decision, I want to see them pony up the money and go hire somebody. Because if you hire somebody that's in the same tier level type experience and, a few other factors as Sam Pittman, there's a good chance you're right back in this spot 5 years from now. So why not just let Sam Pittman keep going and not have to start all over? You have potential mass exodus of players and whatnot. So, like, if that's my problem with people saying, oh yeah, let's go ahead and get rid of Pittman, that's great and all, but if the athletic director and the board of trustees and, all these donors that, want to help make that decision, if they're not going to also be like, okay, we're going to, collectively put all this money together, similar to how we brought in Coach Cal, like, what's the point?
I would agree with you. I'm sure Seth has some thoughts on that as well, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it needs to be a launching off point situation. It's not, this isn't good grief, you stunk at your job firing. Like, that isn't what this is. This is long-term planning. This is what this is. This is are we going to make the right decision on it, as a university to go forward? I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't want just, all right, well, let's go roll the dice and see what we get, what comes out of the old magic coaching hat here. And hopefully it's what we want. I don't want to do that at all. I want something that we invest in and something that we know it can be successful, or at least have high expectations for. So like that's where my attitude is. And I agree. That was the same conversation we were having the other night when we were talking. Was it can't just be, well, let's go hire a coach. It's got to be, we know what we're doing. We have a very clear picture of the direction we're going to head with this program if you're going to make that move.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The biggest thing to me that I would hold back on firing Sam Pittman for is, do you lose Petrino if you fire Pittman? Is that a package deal that both of those have to go for you to be able to bring in the coach you're wanting to bring in, whatever? Not that Petrino is the end-all, be-all answer to every one of our offensive problems or anything like that, but like, everybody was so excited to get him back, and there's been some phenomenal improvement on offense this year. And I think everybody can see like where we could get to with, a couple recruiting classes that are geared towards how he wants to play. I think, to me, that's going to be a big question to have in the back of your head if you are the board and Hunter Yurachek and whoever, the powers that be. We hired Petrino to have this Petrino experiment because he's one of the best offensive coordinators out there. He was a phenomenal head coach for several universities as well, so he's got that experience going for him. He's a really good recruiter. I mean, all these things, and you only gave him 1 year, and we saw improvement. Oh, it just wasn't enough improvement, and we had a couple sour taste games, and now we lose everybody, and we're back to square one. If we do that, to your guys' point, you would have, to me, you can't go get another up-and-comer that hasn't really had much SEC experience. Might be a fantastic coach at a Power 4 conference, but let's be real, y'all. It's not always the same. We've seen that time and time again with some of the coaches we've gotten out of the Big Ten, for example, with OBB and you guys like that. I'm obviously Chad Morris came from SMU. There's a person at SMU that looks like a great hire right now, sort of, but I just don't know. At least Pittman, at this point in his career, and I don't know if he's going to retire with health issues. There's a lot of, things going around right now. So we might be forced to go down that road, whether we like it or not. But all the arguments was that he didn't have head coaching experience whenever he got hired in. Well, you can't make that argument now. He's got 5 years worth of head coaching experience. Granted, there's been some ups and downs during it, but he at least has learned a lot along the way. And I think he is a great recruiter, a good CEO type coach. There's been some question marks on game decisions and things of that nature, but I feel like he's gotten better in that regard as the last couple of years have gone on. But he's putting the right pieces around him to succeed. I think they just had a real bad stumble in culture and a bad hire with Enos that set the program back like 2 years, honestly. And they're having to kind of dig themselves out of that hole. But it looks like they're doing it. So to me, it's too early to pull the plug, no matter how the end of this year goes. But if the end of this year does have a sour taste, I think you'll have a lot more questions than answers. But I think that's kind of my biggest emphasis on why the last 3 games need to at least look good. Whether we lose a few of them or not, you have got to be competitive and show that you're gaining some consistency. I hate losing 1-score games. We do it all the time, it feels like lately, but I'd rather lose a 1-score game and show that we were competitive and something happened at the end where we couldn't win it or whatever than get beat by 30. That sucked. So
yeah, and I just want to back everything that everyone said here up. Like, I don't think any of us here are sitting here going, we should fire Sam Pittman. Like, I don't think any of us are saying that right now. No. I think what we're talking about is that there's a standard, and if that standard's not met, there are options out there. And I think that's all what we're talking about right now is no one's calling for Sam Pittman's job, because I think, frankly, at least I know from the 3 of us from having conversations in the past, all 3 of us really like Sam Pittman. Like, that's the truth, is that we really like him. We respect what he's done for this program and bringing it back from, let's be frank, the grave pretty much of where this program was not too long ago. So I'm with you. We're talking about a standard needing to be achieved and a standard being met. So like that's kind of my overall feeling, is that we just really need to hit that standard here at the last of the year.
I agree completely. And I still want to go back to, you only have had Petrino for 1 year.
Yeah.
At OC.
And to your point, I just totally forgot you brought that up, because like, 2000, and this is how my head works. 2008, his first coaching year. Arkansas's offense averaged 21 points per game that first year in 2008.
They weren't
in
great.
2009, year two under Petrino as head coach, it went to 36 points per game. That is a massive increase. That's more than 2 touchdowns a game. So I'm like you, just because the season hasn't gone perfect, I would really that is the big enticing thing right now.
I don't want to give up on the Petrino experiment just because Pittman's been there 5 years.
Exactly.
I think between the Tennessee win, some of the other games that we were competitive in, and everybody could see the writing on the wall if we hadn't had a couple blunder turnovers, we could really be looking at a great year right now, even with the Ole Miss ugly loss. So everybody can see that trajectory, and then trying to keep Petrino around. I don't want to risk losing Petrino potentially just to get a different head coach and start all over. I don't know. I feel like we need to play this out at least one more year and see if we can build on the little bit of momentum we've got this year. I think these last 3 games are critical for sure to continue some momentum, but next year I think has potential, especially if you're able to get Talon back, a whole year of offseason with Petrino and stuff like that. Next year could be another stepping stone in the right direction if we just have some patience. So I don't know. I've got mixed feelings on it, but to me, even if these last couple of games aren't the best, I still think you got to ride it out and see what next year brings.
No, I understand the patience argument. I understand all sides of this argument right now, or this whole conversation. I think almost all of it is with merit. And so I'm 100% hearing what you're saying. I'm thinking that what might end up forcing the hand is if season ticket holders aren't excited. That's going to be part of it. If fans aren't excited about next football season,
at that point, it becomes a business decision.
It becomes
the university's not about to start losing money, as much as you're a check and whoever likes the guy. If that because football is your moneymaker.
Yeah.
At most universities. So if that's not making money and you're starting to lose revenue from that, that's where, regardless of, let's see where this experiment goes, that's what's going to have to happen. And I mean, good points here. Joe Cool jumping in. And this is one thing that I will say I've seen too that I don't understand. The O-line is going to have to improve dramatically, or we're going to have to have this same conversation next year. And to that point, no matter who the quarterback is. And that's the one thing that I rack my brain and try to understand is with Sam Pittman, why is the offensive line awful? They're improved from last year, but that's not saying a whole lot. They have games this year that they looked great. And then have the games where they just don't look much better than last year. And Sam Pittman's supposed to be your one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, the offensive line coach guru. It's what's going on?
Don't look at me. I do a basketball show. So that's going to be my excuse. I have no clue, man. I have no clue. It's extremely frustrating. And that is one of the biggest mysteries of the universe right there, is how you got an offensive line coach who doesn't have a good offensive line. It's baffling. It really is. And I don't know if it has something to do with the level of recruiting that we're doing, if we're just not bringing enough SEC caliber offensive linemen, or what. If that's really the great mystery, is that it's just not to the level it needs to be at recruiting wise, or if it's just that Sam Pittman has too many things on his hands as head coach that the offensive line quality is dropping because of that. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you there.
Well, to me, that's another position group that I think you almost want to ride out one more year and see what Coach Mateos is able to do. They did a fairly good job, in my opinion.
They got improved this year. I will give them all their credit. It's better.
Yeah. Well, they did a good job recruiting out of the portal to fix some issues, kept a couple of guys, and then they got a couple freshmen coming. Nothing crazy, but Mateos has only been here 1 year as well, the true offensive line coach, even though your head coach is an offensive line coach as well. So you'd think we'd be better, but weird things happen, I guess. I don't know. But that's another position group and coach that has done fairly good things in the recruiting side of the ball, even in the transfer portal, for example. I kind of want to see what another cycle could bring player-wise, get a little bit more depth there, get a little bit more talent there. Maybe, are we able to see some more positive trajectory just in that position group next year? Because you just brought in a new coach for that position as well. So I don't know. I know Pittman's been there a minute, but you've got some of these coordinators that are around him that haven't had a chance to really like prove what they can do all the way. And I think to me that's a part of an argument to try to keep the boys all together, if that makes sense. But I don't know if you got. I mean, it's really such a double-edged sword, two-sided coin, whatever you want to call it. On the business side of it, if you did hire a new head coach, whole new staff, maybe you get a little bit more invigoration from the fan base to show up just to see what's new. I think that was a lot of the reason why some of these games have had such high fan turnout is you got Petrino back. That was a splash hire, honestly, that reinvigorated the fan base at the beginning of this past season. So, do you want to try to do that again? Or I don't know. It's such a hard position to be in right now that makes these last 3 games as critical as we've already mentioned, several times. But it's a weird spot to be in, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Let's jump into quick updates this week. No Monday press conference from Pittman as it is a bye week for Arkansas, but you did have the weekly SEC teleconference that was this week, and Pittman spoke briefly on that. And a couple of things to note from that was, as far as injury news, between Talon and Jaquindon Jackson, Pittman kind of said, if Arkansas were to have a game this week, those guys probably wouldn't be looking good to play. Talon banged up. So that injury earlier in the season was to his left knee. Well, this time it was to his right knee, and Pittman called it a sprain. He didn't specify MCL, ACL, whatever. He just said a knee sprain. And so he was able to go through walkthroughs, but he said it's hard to tell until we get into next week when you actually start having game prep for Texas as far as game week. And as far as Jaquindon, that's an interesting, thought, especially because he's been out 2 weeks now. So he didn't play against Mississippi State, didn't play against Ole Miss. So you got to wonder, was that ankle injury more serious that occurred during LSU than what initially maybe thoughts were? But we'll have to see what next week holds for that. And then something, we were talking about the defense in the secondary earlier. One of those things were the question got asked to Pittman was that, have you thought about maybe playing some of these young guys? Specifically, the guy that got called out or asked about was Selman Bridges, one of the, top 40 DBs in the country, 4 or 5-star guy that, flipped to Arkansas and got brought in, and they said he's had really great development and things of that nature. And, they said with the struggles last week, you give that guy a chance to come out here and play, if he hasn't, I don't know his number of snaps this season, but if he theoretically, he could play the rest of the season, still maintain that red shirt. So if that was their goal of not, they didn't want to play him too much and risk, losing the ability to redshirt him, but there's that option there to see, does he give you any type of help in the secondary? And the other part of that Pittman didn't necessarily touch on was we still don't know 100% when Jalen Braxton's going to be back. And that's a big part of it as well. He was our guy that really came on late last year, really shined, had a big game against Florida on the road last year. And so between those two guys, it makes you wonder, do we see a few personnel changes for next week?
I would personally think that if you got somebody on the bench right now and you're just worried about, and they have no issue with their redshirt status or anything at this point, why not give them a try? If they're going to actually help you or not. But I would say the coaches have seen these guys every day in practice, and they probably have a pretty good picture of who's going to help you out or not. So, I'm all for it. If you think that there's somebody who could give you a hand right now and you're not going to risk the red shirt situation, go for it. I have no problem with that. Honestly, especially in that Louisiana Tech game where you've probably got a little bit more wiggle room to work with there to see what somebody's got in real game situations. So, as far as individual players go, like I said, I think the coaches know they've got a picture of it. They see it every day. So to me, that's really where I think the situation is at. So I'm not panicked about anything. When you started mentioning young players, again, I do a basketball show. I was totally ready for you to start talking about Malachi Singleton, because that's kind of been the whole conversation around the fan base. And I did not mean to open up that can of worms to the chat right now, because I'm sure there might be somebody who's ready to start pounding the chat with, we need to start Malachi Singleton. I have no problem letting someone get some snaps if it's going to not cost them a year of eligibility.
Yeah. And, quickly, I'm sure Seth's busy doing daddy duty. So we'll continue here. So that was the key things that I took out of the press conference this week. The only other thing that was mentioned, Pittman was very honest when they were talking about how, Mississippi State was, or not Mississippi State, Ole Miss was able to throw all over Arkansas in that secondary. And he said, they tried upwards, close to double digit coverages, scheming, and, trying to figure out something to stop these guys. But, that offense, I feel like our secondary is probably out of, you look, your front four, your linebackers, and your secondary, out of those three groups, your secondary is probably your weakest right now. That's the weak link. And, historically, that's been the case for Arkansas. We've never really truly had a great secondary. Not saying we haven't had great individual players, but as a whole,
yeah, you've never had the Seattle Seahawks, what do they call it, the Legion of Boom, back there by any means. Yeah, no, and that's something that I don't know. Like, I think it can happen at some point, but like you definitely at some point need to go out and get yourself some corners who can flat out fly. Do you remember when this program, in the 2000s had Lawrence Richardson and Ahmad Carroll playing in the secondary? Like, you had lockdown corners. Like, it's possible to get lockdown corners at this program. And I do believe that is something that Arkansas, especially in this day and age where it's throw the ball all over the field, go get you some corners, go get you some guys who can shut down some number 1 and number 2 receivers and have some track speed. Like, honestly, there are guys out there available that can do that.
Yeah. And Seth, just to preface this,
I know exactly what you're going with there, Seth. Like, I see it.
Yeah, and to preface this, Seth, I was talking about how during the weekly teleconference, they'd asked Pittman specifically about, do you start giving a guy like Selman Bridges, the highly touted top 40 recruit and at his position, the opportunity to get more snaps this week, especially with how bad the secondary's been? And on top of that, is it one of those things where he hasn't played a ton this season because they're wanting to keep a red shirt? Or is it just they thought they had the talent ahead of him where they wouldn't necessarily need him this year?
It's probably a couple of things, frankly. Red shirt could be a piece of it. But, I mean, let's be real here, y'all. Guys can come in with high 4-star ratings, things like that, even 5-star ratings, and not be college ready. That happens all the time. At a lot of other schools, too. I mean, a lot of the times you can get guys come in as a freshman and are impact freshmen. Braylon Russell's a prime example. We've talked about it, though. Braylon Russell was ahead of the curve physically compared to a lot of freshmen coming out of high school. He's enormous, does not have a freshman body at all, and I think that's helped him. To me, that's a big piece of it, is just the experience level, the college readiness. There's a big learning curve and jump between high school ball and college ball. It doesn't even matter where you played high school. You could have played at some of the biggest schools in Texas that are basically colleges, essentially, just in football, but it still isn't the same as the SEC. It's not. So these coaches see that in practice and see, what they're able to do in practice. I think there's probably more to that than anything, because realistically, I think this coaching staff isn't scared to play a freshman. It's obviously the case if they're going to give you the best chance to win. However, at this point in the season, especially when you've got a game like Louisiana Tech coming up, you are at the point where somebody like that could get a couple of games under their belt, build towards next year, have some of that collegiate experience to kind of help them grow while also keeping a red shirt potentially. You can kind of get maybe the best of both worlds. Have somebody like that develop that is going to be a big piece for you in the future. Try to give them a little bit of a head start just with some in-game reps and things of that nature. So that's probably the reason why right now, at this point, I don't know if our secondary could really be much worse. So why not go ahead and give somebody like that a shot just to get some reps, understand, what the speed is like in the SEC. Where do I need to develop personally let him learn where he needs to develop during the offseason, things of that nature, to be a better player next year, because that's going to be where he's needed the most. So I completely agree. This is the time for players like that are kind of on the fringe, young guys. As much as we need to win these last 3 games, or at least be competitive in them, I think you also have to look towards the future too, and try to get the best bang for your buck out of these last 3 games, and see if you can kind of do both at the same time, especially with players where you've seen some issues. I love Danico Slaughter to death, and he brings a ton of experience. But let's be real, he's been burnt a lot just from a physical ability standpoint. Sometimes he's in the right play at the right time. He's just 2 yards behind the receiver. He knew where to go. He knew where the ball was going. He was just out-athleted or something like that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I agree. You know, I think you have to let some of those guys get some reps if the game time makes it available for you, whether either A, getting beat by a lot, winning by a lot, or whatever. But I'd like to see some guys like that were some of your higher-rated freshmen coming in, get maybe a little bit of head start on what next year could be with some college reps right now.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. And you know, so with that, we'll kind of, you know, see what next week holds, and it'll be interesting to see what game planning and, you know, what type of those things happen, you know, between this week, next week, and, you know, if guys get healthy, you know, that's going to be one of the bigger question marks. Is Taylor going to be ready? Things like that. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump over into Arkansas basketball and David's wheelhouse here. With last night was Coach Cal's first game officially as the head hog at Arkansas, and Arkansas gets the win over Lipscomb 76-60, a 16-point win. You know, a couple notes for this game was by just a few numbers here. It was the 1800th win in program history, the 51st straight home opener win. Arkansas is 32-0 in home openers at Bud Walton. And Coach Cal is 1-0 as the Razorback head coach and 30-3 in home openers. So initial thoughts on this game, you know, we'll go ahead and kick it over to you for those first thoughts, David.
Yeah, I want to throw a couple of things out here to you guys. So first off, the first number I'm going to throw out there is 10. So the number 10 right now is, anybody guess what Arkansas, where it might be ranked 10th after that game in the country on the spreadsheet across the country right now?
Points off turnovers.
Not points off turnovers, but very close, Seth.
Turnovers itself. KenPom
right now, which we have a sizable piece of data now that everybody's played basically everyone in the country's played a basketball game now. Arkansas ranked 10th, the 10th best defensive rating in the country. And you got to realize, yeah, that rating's probably going to change as the year goes on. It may not be there, but like when you look at other teams who played extremely well, they're in the neighborhood of teams like Kansas, who was 9th in their opening game, Arizona, Michigan State, Rutgers, Cincinnati. And I think you saw the product on the floor last night when they played. Like, honestly, this team was stopping everything. They only allowed 60 points to what's actually a very efficient offense for a mid-major team. So I was very impressed with Razorback defense last night. No addition of Adu is going to be dangerous for us. Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Like, Jonas Adu getting back is going to be extremely helpful for the Razorbacks, not only just on the defensive end, which I'm giving a lot of praise for right now because he was one of the best defensive rated players for Tennessee last year. He's also had the third best points per 40 for Tennessee last season as well. And you're talking about a team that had a couple of guys who could put up buckets, like Dalton Connect and Zakai Ziegler, who was also very efficient on the offensive end. He's a great athlete, and you really hope that he's healthy for this upcoming Baylor game. So I'm very excited. If he could get healthy and back to the mix, it's good. Also, some other numbers out there. There were 5 Razorbacks last night who were in double digit in the plus minus in this basketball game. And those names, if anybody wants to guess them real fast, Boogie Flam put up plus 20 in this game. Janelle Davis was plus 17. Trevin Brazil was plus 17. And then you also had DJ Wagner putting up plus 15. There were a couple of moments in this game where they made mistakes, and you can see the chemistry hasn't fully come together yet for them on the offensive end. I would say that's Arkansas's biggest weakness right now is they've got to improve the offense. But when we were looking back on my show, when we were doing the preview for Arkansas season, what we saw last night was pretty much what we expected as a floor level for Arkansas's offense this season. They came out, when I did the math, it came out to something like 1.05 points per possession in this game. They are more than capable, like the players on this team. DJ Wagner was probably the worst points per possession or worst points per shot player on this team that came out of the transfer class, and he was at 1.11. So I would expect this offense to only get better throughout the year. So if you have a combination of this defense with an ever-improving offense throughout the course of the year, the potential is really, really there for the Razorbacks to be great. This is a very, very talented group of team. And I honestly think we probably saw them play one of their worst games of basketball this season. Fingers crossed. Like that if that's where we're starting with, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I'll add just a little color there. We didn't shoot the ball that well from three.
No.
We shot the ball well overall, but it's because we had a bajillion points off turnovers where we had breakaway easy dunks or easy layups or things like that because our defense played well. There was a lot of defense to offense that happened that inflated that overall field goal percentage. We shot 54%, but we only shot 21% from three. I think this team is a better three-point shooting team than we saw against Lipscomb. And if you get that piece to be more consistent, that's at even more fuel to the fire on how wild this offense has the potential to be. We were 4 of 19 from three. I really think we've got better shooters. Just from what we've kind of seen early on, the Kansas game, you've got some guys that can really fill it up from beyond the arc at really every position. And you're not going to ask that all the time from like Big Z, for example, but he can hit threes.
Yeah.
Trevor Brazile, you're not really going to ask that a lot from him either. You're intentionally trying to not have him shoot many threes, but he can still hit them. Nelly Davis, Boogie Fland, DJ, they all can hit threes. Like all these guys can shoot fairly well. So I think that piece will come. They've got to get their timing with each other down a little bit on some of the kickouts, finding the guy for the open look when it comes to the deep ball. I think that'll grow. I think that's well on its way to being better than it is because you have better shooters than that. You just got to find those open looks. I think it's coming though. Like to your point though, this team, that was the one big thing I talked about after the Kansas exhibition was how early and often and how well we were doing on defensive rotations. Yeah, it stood out to me against Kansas, and I think that's carried forward, and the offense hopefully will catch up.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I think the defense is getting there very quickly, and that's kind of what I expected with Kenny Payne coming back to Calipari because they had some great defenses together when those two were combined at Kentucky. That was championship level defense every year for the most part. I think they hit the threshold of being top 40 in KenPom every season for I think it was 9 out of 10 years when I was going through the spreadsheet there. But to your point on the shooting, did anybody listen to Calipari's press conference after the TCU game? So after the TCU game, Arkansas blows that lead against TCU. And the first thing that he says in that press conference is he's talking about, I wouldn't have known that this team didn't know how to win if that didn't happen. So now I have to teach them how to win. Last night, we saw Lipscomb, who's, again, a very good mid-major basketball team, one that's got a real chance to win their conference this season, just try to put everything they could to coming back and winning that game last night. Arkansas came out immediately out of the under 4 timeout, went on a 6-0 run, and closed that basketball game out last night. You think they had a conversation about that after TCU. What's the first thing that Calipari talked about in this press conference after this game with Lipscomb? What did he say? What was how about this for an idea? Hit a 3. And then he started talking about working in the gym. So to me, I think it's very clear Calipari's seeing the issues. He knows the issues. He knows what's going on. And it's going to be about fixing this and progressing. He's talking about we can fix this 3-point shooting. We got to get in the gym. We got to make consistency out of shooting these threes because we do know this team can shoot better than what it's shooting. Boogie Fland is not going to go out there and throw up a million threes and none of them fall. We saw him do it. If you paid attention to Boogie Fland in high school basketball when he was in the EYBL circuit, he shot 30%, which is not an ideal percentage. But every scout out there who was scouting Boogie Fland kept saying, it's not his shot. It's the fact he's making poor shooting decisions. That's where he's got to clean up his game at, and that's going to get him improved. That's where coaching comes in, and I think that's something Calipari can fix and get him better at. Carter Knox has the ability to shoot at 35% is what he was shooting in the EYBL circuit. I think he can do that as well, and he can be a very good shooter and an excellent athlete. I think we all saw that dunk that he threw down last night as well. So he's got the potential. Nelly Davis was shooting 50% from corner threes at FAU. These guys can shoot. I'm with you guys on that 100%. It's got to be worked on. The game plan's got to come together offensively. You could see that there were some fundamentals on play calling to get those threes going, but Cal's right. It's got to be something to fix on the shot selection. It's got to be something to get comfortable in the repetition of your shot, making sure your form's correct every single time. And the other thing is, too, what Calipari also said in this game, that was a tough ask for a first basketball game because that is a team that wants to move you, wear you out, and get you exhausted. They wanted to run Arkansas last night as much as possible. Calipari said 30 minutes into the game, game time 30 minutes in, they were already getting tired. And that's because of how much Arkansas got worked in that game. It's not going to be a long-term problem, but that can also make it get out of those fundamentals and make you mess up shooting some shots. So I do think this team can shoot way better than what they have shown us through 2 exhibition games and this one in this last game. I think it might take a moment. It may take 2 or 3 games, but it's not going to surprise me here pretty soon before maybe we get to December that this team has a 40% shooting night from 3. I think that can definitely happen.
Yeah. Let's take a quick look at, there's some good points here in the comments. I want to get to here. So, Whoopig jumping in here. 1 point here. Brazil nearly had a double-double coming off the bench last night. He's going to be a guy I think is going to become asked to come in, cut a lot, and run the floor as a forward. And I think that's true. And if you listen to Cal early on, especially after the Kansas game, look at what Brazil did last night, especially when you look at the rebound column. That's what Coach Cal said is going to get guys playing time. He said he wants guys to go in and fight for rebounds and, make smart decisions for that. And then just hustle. And so if Brazil is a guy that, we've seen spurts of how good he can be the past few seasons. If he's a guy that comes in and works, and I think he wants to be, and isn't necessarily worried about, well, I'm not starting or, I'm not getting the ball all the time. If he just comes in and works, I think we'll see games like this where he starts kind of showing us the type of player he can be when there's not a ton of focus on him and things of that nature. And then, keeping on the trend of bigs, Big Z is a guy who's going to be asked to facilitate from the elbow to the free throw line. He can create a lot of different offense with his passing and shooting ability from the perimeter. That's the big thing that we saw last year. We're seeing him develop more, especially with, Kenny Payne coming back, working with a big man. But Z was a guy who was a fantastic passer last year at Kentucky. That was kind of his highlight plays last year at Kentucky, not necessarily big dunks or anything like that, was his ability to make the passes. And so I think that's going to be something that, between Brazil and Z, once these guys mesh truly and this team gets their footing under them, could be a very dangerous combination.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Look, NBA scouts were talking about Trevin Brazil there, 2 years ago, right? They were talking about Trevin Brazil's game may have been complemented by Anthony Black. Last season, Trevin Brazil kind of takes this weird step back. He's actually not playing as bad as what it was made out to be. There were a lot of dumb mental mistakes that were going on last year, but overall, the numbers weren't just horrifically horrible, but it was kind of clear to everybody he took a step back. Who was Arkansas's point guard last year? Really, point to the guy who was actually the point guard for Arkansas last year. We knew who the point guard was 2 years ago with Anthony Black. We knew who was running that offense. This year, you've got Boogie Fland and DJ Wagner, who are both excellent point guards. And Wagner's got a year of experience under his belt. He can help open up Trevin Brazil's game even more with the experience that he's had. So I'm expecting that Trevin Brazil's game is going to be a little bit closer to what we saw 2 years ago this season, especially if he's been working on the fundamentals. And I don't know why, but when guys go to the NBA Combine route for a little bit and then come back to school, they tend to play a lot at a higher level right now. You're seeing that at Jaron Stevenson right now the other night out of Alabama. He did the exact same thing. So I'm expecting TB to step up a little bit this year as well. Big Z, going out there playing in the Adriatic League. He's got some professional experience in the European circuit. They really teach over there a lot of those passing skills. Being a mobile forward kind of skills over there in the Euroball stage. If you ever watch the Olympics, it's similar things that are being taught. I like the addition with Kenny Payne working with him, trying to expand his game more. And I thought we saw some really good minutes from him last night. Like when I looked at it, let me pull up the spreadsheet here again. So he had 3 blocks in this game. So you get added rim protection going into this, 3 rebounds, 12 points. And he was extremely efficient from the field, going 5 for 6. I think there's a lot of big man things that are being added to his game. And that's going to make him such a dangerous player, is that he's also one that can step out and stretch the floor, which when you get Jonas Adu back, having a 4 that can step out and shoot a 3 is going to create a lot more space in the paint. That's going to even help Jonas Adu's game. So I really like how the team complements together. Woo Pig's got another comment on here. He's talking about DJ Wagner's slashing ability. Look, man, when DJ Wagner came out of high school, and I did my video on him on my channel for DJ Wagner and going through his high school film. This kid can play, and I'm with you. The aggression that you will see going through those highlights and his ability to slash and go to the hole, he's got that ability, and he's also got the ability to facilitate along with it. It's one of the more aggressive players that I've really liked the style for him. What we're all waiting for is his 3-point shooting to improve. And he shot better in high school than what he did last season at Kentucky. I don't know why he didn't shoot up the numbers that he had more than capable of in shooting threes last season, but for whatever reason, he's better than a 29.2% 3-point shooter. And it's just going to be a matter of getting him consistent on his shot. That's the one thing I'm looking for in DJ Wagner's game, because he can run point on this team. And I'm like you, I love the slashing ability. I love how aggressive he is. And I love the fact that he attacks the rim. Like, those are fundamental things that if you have a guy who can play that way, it's some of the best basketball you're going to watch. And you can watch a kid take over a game.
Not to mention, too, with him, he's a guy that, he has had a year experience under Cal, so he knows the expectations and the asks from Coach Cal, and he can help, some of these younger guys, and just continue to improve their game. I mean, that combination and that experience he can bring to help, Boogie Flan develop even more. He looks great already, but just that additional bit of expectations from Cal and how to play in his type of offense is going to be big. And another guy, like this says here, Nelly Davis, I think is going to be a good guy that leads the young guards to be able to cook up. But then when a bucket's needed or we need to slow the pace, Nelly Davis is a guy you can call upon because he's had several years experience. And also the big thing I think for this team is he brings the experience from a NCAA tournament postseason level. And I think that's going to be big for some of these younger guys that might not have been there before. You got to think the DJ Wagners, Adu Thiero, those guys that came over from Kentucky, they've been to postseason with Cal. But, your Boogie Flans, Billy Richmonds, Carter Knox, these young freshmen, he can't be anything but help for these guys.
I will say this, when you looked at last night's stats, right, when he was shooting, he only went 1 for 4 from the field from 3. We know he's a better 3-point shooter than that. That's not the concern. But what I loved last night with Janelle Davis is the fact that he came out there and he attacked that rim. And he got to the paint a couple of times and found points in different ways. And he actually, for the night, went 7 for 12 on the floor. And I think him attacking the rim really helped quite a bit. For Arkansas to get some momentum in this game. Like, I was making a comment when I was watching the game last night on our Twitter page. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a team shoot 57% from the floor and struggle as much as they have from 3 tonight. It was wild, this even conceiving that, but that's because of how much this team was getting to the paint and how efficiently they were playing, and they were figuring out ways to get points. So I definitely appreciated seeing Janelle Davis step up throughout the game and just, okay, the 3 ball is not falling tonight. It'll fall eventually, but for me right now, I'm going to go attack this rim. That worked for them. Against Baylor this weekend, they're going to have to shoot a little bit better. I think they're going to have to shoot a little bit better. I think they're going to have to find some different ways to win. There's got to be some people out. There's got to be some guys who step up the shooting department just a little bit in this game, whether that be Boogie Flan. Janelle Davis is who I would expect to be the guy. Like, I'm waiting for him to wake up offensively entirely. I think he started coming around last night, and that made it a lot of fun to watch. But I'm super excited for this game that's coming up on Saturday, because that's going to be one of the most fun matchups we get in the non-conference schedule this year.
Yeah, I agree. Another player that I think like these three freshmen that came in, they're all really talented. That's no doubt. You can tell Boogie Flan's more impact ready right away. Not saying these other guys aren't as talented, but a guy that, Cal specifically called out in his press conference last night, Billy Richmond. He said he had Billy Richmond, be the opposing point guard in practice this week. You know, and I think later on the season, you're going to see him really start to come into his own. But I think he does have the chance to be a great defender around the rim and guarding the best opposing player. But even Cal mentioned, if he gets there, he's a guy that he could see potentially running point for this team as well. If, say, you're giving Boogie Fland or DJ Wagner some breaks, he can be a guy that can come in there and, control the ball a little bit.
Well, I think that's one of the big strengths about Arkansas this year is that you have so many players who are combo this, combo that. For Adu Thiero, like he grew up late into his body and he developed a lot of guard skills for his game, for example, but he can still play as a big man too because he's grown and built those forward skills as well. For Boogie Fland, he's a combo guard that you could slide over at any point and have him play shot, have him play the 2 or the 3. And let Wagner run the 1. The same opportunity exists for Billy Richmond. For me, I think it might look like some combination. I haven't seen practice yet with that, but I think it's a possibility if you did run Richmond out there, it looks something of a combination between what Debo Davis and Anthony Black was and having his own point guard style. But I think Billy Richmond's such an athlete that I really like the idea more of him attacking from the wings right now because like we haven't quite seen it yet unless you've just watched some highlights from some of the exhibition games, but he's got some Ricky Council finishing ability in him for what kind of athlete he is. So I really like his ability to be able to play out there on the wings and be someone who's a slasher and a cutter. But I have no problem. Like I said, the strength of this Razorback team to me, even though they don't have the depth, they have the versatility to make up that depth. And I think that's something that's really appealing moving forward for this team. And like I said, last night's performance, I think it was overall I'll give it a B- performance, overall, because like the defense was great. They played a solid basketball game against a good mid-major. If you look, I'm on a Razorback show right now and I'm a Razorback alumni. I can say this. Kentucky fans might be talking about a lot of praise right now for their offense, and their offense is going to be darn good. Mark Pope knows what the heck he's doing with an offensive scheme, but I want everyone to know that they played like the number 240 team in the country when they played that team. Arkansas played like one of the better mid-majors. They played a mid-major who's roughly in the top 150. So 100 spots better in in the scale last night, and one that's probably got an actual chance to win their conference. Wright State's not going to be smelling the rice.
That's what I was going to say too, David. Everybody's looking at this Lipscomb team, but their team that's projected to win the ASUN this year. And so they're not just it takes a kind of a note from like what we saw Anthony Rutter do from us, scheduling some teams that have the chance to be in the top of their conference, if not win it. And that's what we saw from a Lipscomb squad last night that beat Duquesne earlier in the week, who was also a tournament team last year. But to, your point and what Whoopig's saying too, for Baylor Saturday, Baylor has a lot of young guards who do like to run out and get in transition. And part of it is DJ Wagner, Boogie Flan. If our guards can get after them early and knock down shots, we have a good chance. And then also when you look at the front court, they are physical around the rim and like to kind of muck things up there. And I think a big part of that is going to be, we saw a total of 7 minutes from Adu last night.
Yeah. And
Coach Cal said he was about 75%. Don't know how much that's going to improve between yesterday and Saturday, but, even if he plays 10, 11 minutes, 12 maybe, I think that's going to do nothing but help you. But I think this is going to be a game where Big Z and Brazil and possibly Thiero is going to be called upon, especially down low, to work hard this week.
Yeah. So let me first off, Whoopig, do you watch my show? Because like we were talking about those Baylor freshmen on my show the other night. Yeah. So I'll start there. Baylor does have some very talented guards, and they've got some NBA talent ones as well that are going to be coming in. Jeremy Roach is a really good player that came out of Duke. And then you want to talk about some NBA talent, VJ Edgecombe. He didn't play great against Gonzaga, but we've seen the tape and we know what he's capable of. He's definitely someone that wants to get out, run, play in transition, and he can make some highlight reel finishes. He's a very talented player. So VJ Edgecombe, and then Rob Wright is another good player that Baylor picked up. That's the number one true point guard in this class, a freshman coming into this year. So yeah, Baylor's got some dudes that can definitely play. And as far as their front court goes, if Jonas Adu is healthy, I like Jonas Adu versus Norchad Omier. I am a fan of that. Omir's a little bit undersized. Obviously, Jonas Adu has played at a much more difficult conference than what Norchad Omier had played at in the ACC. I think that Jonas Adu would probably be the better center, in my opinion. I think it can be a fight. If we don't have Jonas Adu, yeah, it's going to be a real challenge. And I do think, as you have in the 5 spot here, Trevin Brazil, very athletic. You've got a lot of length when you add Z out there, and they're both guys who can step out and shoot. And then we saw it also, you're right, Caleb, for touching on this, Adu Thero. We saw it last year in that Kansas game where Kentucky was out Trey Mitchell, and they were out Aaron Bradshaw. They had nobody big for that Kentucky team at that time at that 5 spot to play against Hunter Dickinson. That's a big ask, and they asked Duthiero to get out there and do it. And he's athletic enough that he guarded one of the best big men out there. Not yet, but I've been doing my film work, David. Hoop Southbound. That's the channel. Thanks you. I appreciate it. But yeah, no, they had guys out. He was athletic enough to guard one of the best centers in the country. And that's a testament to the type of athlete that he is. So Arkansas, to me, has a good chance. They have a chance to beat Baylor this weekend. It's going to be a very tough ask. It's going to be a hard game, and it's going to be one, to me, that Baylor really needs to bounce back after just getting worked against Gonzaga this weekend. But everything that Woo Pig's saying right now is exactly spot on. They've got guys who can play, and they have some very, very talented players out there. I'm worried as a Razorback fan and alumni, but I'm very excited for the game on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Just a quick rundown of stats. We talked about all these guys, but from last night, you had Boogie Flynn that was your leading scorer, 17 points, 7-18 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3. He hit both his free throws, had 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Janelle Davis, second leading scorer there. Nellie Davis, 15 points, 7 of 12 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3. Had 6 rebounds, 1 assist. You had Big Z, your third leading scorer, scoring 12 points in the double digits, 5 of 6 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. He had that 3 late in the game that kind of sparked us a big run late in the game. He finished with 3 rebounds. And then Brazil, like Woo Pig mentioned, he only scored 6 points, but he also had put up 8 rebounds and, came in and worked hard. So, you're going to see different guys go off, different games. That's just how talented this team is. I don't think there's going to be, you might see 1 or 2, but there's going to be no set. This guy is going to be, or these 3 are going to be your consistent top ones every game. This team has enough talent that I think, especially as the chemistry in game develops around all these guys, that it may be Boogie Flynn one night, and we saw that against Kansas, and then you turn around and you see Adu Thero kind of be the key guy against TCU leading the way. And I think with just the talent on this team, those are the types of things that you'll see.
Yeah, there's going to be a game for everybody, right? There's so much talent on this team that they're going to have a matchup opportunity. There's going to be a night where the front court outdoes the back court, however you want to spin that. There's so much talent on this team that someone's going to have a breakout game every other night. I'm not saying that's going to happen, that they're going to put up 30 every night. I'm saying that there's an opportunity out there for every player on this team to have a huge night. Because frankly, there's how many players on this team with NBA potential? Seriously, when you go down this roster, and the plus minuses last night were excellent. The team looked overall really good. I think what we're going to see now is, as competition gets ramped up, who's going to rise to the occasion. And I think there's a couple of guys I'm expecting those things out of. A healthy Jonas Adu. is who I expect to rise to the occasion when he is healthy, and then Janelle Davis. Like those two players right there, I would say throughout the course of the season and even starting into this Baylor game, depending on Adu's health, watch these guys because those two are going to be your leaders. They're going to be the ones who set everybody else up. And they had some of the best usage rates on their previous teams. They were set up into being some of the primary players. Between those two last year, I believe that they put up a combination of, what was it? It wasn't 1,000 points, but it was some kind of point total that was larger than the rest of their bench for both of their teams. So I can't remember the stat that came to my head right now, but if someone wants to go out and watch the go out and watch the preview that we did on Arkansas, I said it in there. I can't remember coming to my head, but those are going to be two of your big functional pieces for Arkansas and take to the next level how far Arkansas is going to go this season.
Yeah, agree there. So it should be interesting. Key point Pigpen says here about Big Z working on that post defense. He got crossed up several times. And I think that's just going to come as he continues to develop because, like we said, he only played about 15 games for Kentucky last year. You can only do so much in practice until you get those actual live game reps. And, under the tutelage, I think, of Kenny Payne is going to help him develop tremendously with some of those and on top of some of those other guys on his Coach Cal staff. Because that's one thing a Coach Cal team is good about is having and developing a big man. You think about all the big men that have came through like a Calipari, the system at Kentucky, they're now in the NBA, and just the great big men that came through. I think his skills as they continue to develop during the season is going to be, you're going to see that improvement throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and I think also, you got a new group of players here. He's played with a few of these guys, but he hasn't played with everyone. I think communication is going to be a big part of it. Making sure that he understands where he needs to be on the floor. Chemistry is part of the game too. And with the amount of transfers that you've got in this team and you've had time to work together, but it's not all the way there. And then also I think part of this too is that I think that Big Z's role in this offense is supposed to be more of a sometimes 5 and then more of a big 4. Stretch 4 is how he's supposed to roll. And I think he's playing a lot of Adu's minutes right now and a lot of the role that he's supposed to be in. I totally think that Big Z is supposed to be part of this overall game plan. I think his role is going to be a little bit more in the 4 going forward as Jonas Adu gets healthy. So I think that's also part of it that he's covering down right now as well. So he does need to continue to improve those big man skills, but those are also some things that they were talking about as Kentucky. And I will say from Kentucky to now, those big man skills have continued to improve. It's going to be about how much more he can grow between now and say March. So to me, that's where it's really at right now is that he's getting better. He's shown that he's better from going from the Adriatic League to the SEC. And now he's working forward to what his future might be and developing potentially into an NBA draft pick.
Yeah.
I would say right now a second rounder.
Yeah. 100% agree there. And so, Arkansas will take on Baylor this Saturday at 6:30 on ESPNU. In American Airlines Arena. So, get ready to tune into that. That should be a fun game to watch. It is going to be fantastic. Hopefully, like, David said a while ago, coming from Arkansas fans, hopefully we get that win. But, it's going to be a great early test for this team to really gauge game plans and where we're at. It should be a fun one.
It should be, and it should be one that all fans should enjoy, not just from a basketball perspective, but I really appreciate opportunities to kind of revisit Arkansas history. The Arkansas Baylor series has gone back 100 years. These two teams have been playing all the way back to the Southwest Conference, playing in American Airlines Arena kind of brings back memories of when they were playing in Reunion Arena, Reunion Arena, I believe is what it was in Dallas, where they used to play the Southwest Conference Championship game and the tournament there for back when they had basketball there. So this is a unique opportunity to kind of bring back some of those old Southwest Conference rivals. It's something I definitely want to see brought back, since no longer in the conference, occasionally going down to Dallas and playing a team that would be of the higher caliber of the Big 12 and a big opportunity in Dallas would be something that I would think would be great. Also, I think I mentioned this to you, Caleb. Baylor's won this game the last 3 times they've played. I would really, really appreciate it if Arkansas could, end that streak right now, because, you almost dominate the series by 50 games at this point. So I would just like to see Arkansas win it and get that streak dead.
Exactly. Yeah. And so a couple other things to know before we do get out of here. Arkansas soccer, they had the SEC tournament going on this weekend. They won their first match against Georgia 1-0. And just a few minutes ago, unfortunately, in the semis, fell to Texas 2-1 in double overtime in the semifinals of the SEC tournament. Tough loss for what's been a great season for this Arkansas ladies soccer team. But the road's not over. This is just the SEC tournament. We still got, the NCAA tournaments, to go, where this team should be a fairly high seed. I feel comfortable saying, has the chance to be a number 1 seed, possibly 2 seed, and has a chance to host some games here. So be on the lookout for that. Unfortunately, like we said, they did fall tonight in a close game with Texas. Other than that, bye week, no football this week, so you can relax and not have to deal with, the stress that is an Arkansas football game, and just relax and watch college football as a fan for the day, and then tune in to Arkansas basketball at 6:30. And then we'll be back next week talking about Texas Hate Week. It's here, and hopefully this team can find some way to, like we mentioned earlier in the show, talking about the coaching situation, find some fight. That's what Arkansas fans want to see. You might not necessarily win this game. This isn't when you go into the season necessarily expecting to win. But if this is one where we can just, show some fight, show some improvement, and not get blown out by 30 and get 60 dropped at home. So Seth and I'll be back next week to kind of break that down. And, we'll have our recap Sunday to talk about the Baylor game. But until then, we thank David for jumping on the show. Woo Pig Ask, but you can let everybody know where to find you at for not only Arkansas content, but also college basketball content, SEC and mid-major.
Yeah. So, it's called the Hoop Southbound Show. Just as you see, like right there on my little underscore subtitle there, or whatever it's called. We follow SEC basketball. We do a ton of content on it. So I invited Caleb on my show a couple of days ago, and we talked nonstop previewing this previewing this Baylor Arkansas game. That video is out right now. You guys can check that out if you want to hear us talk about it a little bit more. Also, we've got previews for every team that's in the SEC. So if you want to know about what I think about Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, who looks pretty darn good, you can check those things out. I've also got videos on all 3 of the Arkansas freshmen that came in, Billy Richmond, Boogie Fland, and Carter Knox, breaking down their film. Maddie is my co-host. She is fantastic. She also did a few of those with me as well. But yeah, I'm a big Razorback fan. I went to school at Arkansas, so grew up in Little Rock. So yeah, I'm a huge Razorback fan. So you will hear us talk, I promise, about the Hawgs at least once a week on the regular show as well, which comes out every Sunday. So if you guys could, I would greatly appreciate it if you guys come over there and drop us a sub, like a video every now and then, and drop us a comment.
Woo Pig's already got you right here. So
that's my man right there.
But, unfortunately, Seth had to jump early. Parental duties called with his son. So, David and I kept this thing rolling. But, we're going to get out of here, and we'll catch you guys on Sunday for our Razor recap, talking about the Baylor game in Dallas.